be here. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank Renee for her introduction, but more than that, I want to thank her for what Intel is doing that she just described. And I hope that more companies will join with her and with Intel to really elevate this issue about diversity and inclusivity in the workforce here in Silicon Valley and literally around our country. I want to thank everyone at Watermark for organizing this terrific gathering and supporting such a vibrant, visionary community of women leaders here in the Bay Area, because you can just feel the energy. I love it. I was watching backstage when Brené Brown was speaking. Isn't she amazing? And the work that she's done and the insights she provides. So for 20 years, Watermark has been helping people, women, grow networks, gain skills, crack ceilings in technology, entrepreneurship, and beyond. So really, it's all of you who should be applauded for being part of this movement. And I am delighted that I can be here for this first Lead On conference. It's a great theme and a very important one, because we do need to lead. We have the information, we understand the challenge, and if there's any place in the world where Lead On should be happening, it's right here, in a place of big dreams and transformational achievements where a kid can have a good idea and then build a billion-dollar company, in a place where faith in the future is so strong that it's taken as a given. In fact, you all know Moore's Law. Computer processors will keep doubling in power roughly every 2 years. Well, there's something very American about that kind of optimism. After all, our country is a great entrepreneurial experiment. Families like my grandparents who came to our shores with nothing but hope and a willingness to work hard, the pioneers who set out for California by wagon train, the patriots who dared imagine that a new nation could be built on the novel proposition that all of us are created equal. And even though it's taken centuries to turn that idea into reality, and we're still not there, those dreamers and doers would have been right at home here. Because the innovation and success we see around us is proof that progress is possible, but also that it is not inevitable. Not in a life, not in a country. After all, Moore's Law doesn't tell the whole story. Those processors don't get smaller and more powerful on their own. That takes incredible effort and ingenuity. It takes people not only working hard, but working together. And America's prosperity and security are not inevitable either. We've learned that we can bounce back from some pretty tough blows. So we know that progress is possible if we as a country harness all our talents, find the best and freshest ideas, no matter where they come from, and grow together, lift each other up. Today, I want to focus briefly on two areas where you know, and I know, there's much more work to be done. Women and technology and our broader economy. Now, many of you in this audience know far more about those two areas than I do or ever will. You live it every day. You bump your heads on the glass ceilings that persist in the tech industry. You watch too many of our daughters and granddaughters get diverted away from careers in STEM. As familiar as this story is, and we heard Renee summarizing it as she made the announcement about what Intel will try to do, it is still shocking. The numbers are sobering. On the Forbes list of the top 100 venture investors in tech, only 4 are women. Just 11% of executives in Silicon Valley and only about 20% of software developers overall are women. One recent report on the gender pay gap in the Valley found that a woman with a bachelor's degree here tends to make 60% less than a man with the same degree. And we can literally count on one hand the number of women who have actually been able to come here and turn their dreams into billion-dollar businesses. And think of this. While nearly 60% of college graduates are now women, they earn only 18% of the computer science degrees. That's actually less than half of what it was in the 1980s when women earned 38% of those degrees. We are going backwards in a field that is supposed to be all about moving forward. Women and girls remain underrepresented in STEM education more broadly, and with STEM jobs growing faster and paying more than many other fields, this puts our daughters and granddaughters at a disadvantage that can have lasting consequences for them, their families, and yes, our economy. I think the bottom line here is we cannot afford to leave all that talent sitting on the sidelines. So to borrow a familiar phrase, it's time to think different. All of us in the private sector, government, the nonprofit world, and education, we all have a stake in making this better, from the classroom to the boardroom. I love the way Watermark supports a class at Stanford's business school focused on women's entrepreneurship. I really appreciated when Google became the first big tech company to disclose the demographics of its tech workforce. 83% male, 17% female, 2% Latino, 1% Black. So there's a lot of entry points into tackling this problem. At the Clinton Foundation, we're working with partners to recruit more STEM teachers for schools. We've also organized a series of codeathons to bring together young women software engineers to collaborate on new apps to promote women's health and wellness, while also building new professional networks for themselves. And many of you are involved in other efforts to open avenues for women and people of color to participate and succeed in this industry. And we have to keep that work going and growing, because inclusivity is more than a buzzword or a box to check. It is a recipe for success in the 21st century. Bringing different perspectives and life experiences into corporate offices, engineering labs, and venture funds is likely to bring fresh ideas and higher revenues. And in our increasingly multicultural country, in an increasingly interdependent world, building a more diverse talent pool can't just be a nice to do for business. It has to be a must do. Now, of course, the challenges we're talking about are by no means limited to the tech fields. Less than 5% of all Fortune 500 CEOs are women. And women entrepreneurs often have a much harder time accessing capital to start or grow a business. Up and down the ladder, many women are paid less for the same work, which is why I think we all cheered at Patricia Arquette's speech at the Oscars, because she's right. It's time to have wage equality once and for all. But it's not just wage equality. Many working parents all too often don't have access to common sense benefits like sick days and paid leave that would allow them to balance work and family. I think we are embarrassed by, even shocked by the fact we are just one of 9 countries in the entire world without national paid family leave. Now, you may not realize that because Here in California, this state has had paid leave for 10 years. And the last time I looked, it seemed to work well for both businesses and families. But even that is not a silver bullet. As Sheryl Sandberg and others have reminded us, even the professional women who have access to these basic benefits are often set back in their careers. In some cases, simply for taking advantage of family leave or flexible schedules, and in others because of more subtle biases or attitudes in the workplace. When I was a young lawyer and was pregnant, I worked in a small law firm, and there was no family leave policy. It had never come up before. I was the first woman to be a partner in that law firm, and so nobody said anything to me, and I didn't say anything to them. I just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'd walk down the halls, and some of my partners would avert their eyes. They didn't know what to say to me. So when the time came and I went in and gave birth, the next morning, the lead partner called, and he said two things. He said, "Congratulations, and when are you coming back to work?" I said, "Well, thank you very much, maybe in 4 months." Pause. He goes, "Oh, okay." He had no idea. I had no idea. But I was in a position where I could say, okay, 4 months. And too many women, even in those days, I can remember so well, they lost their jobs, they were marginalized, they were demoted for doing one of the most important jobs anybody in a society has, producing the next generation. And even though things have changed in many places, not nearly enough and not everywhere, in so many ways, our economy seems to still be operating like it's 1955. And that's not just a problem for working women, it's a problem for everyone. Just think about all the hardworking families that depend on two incomes to make ends meet. When one is shortchanged, the entire family suffers. In fact, more than 40% of mothers are now the sole or primary breadwinners for their families, and our economy depends on the strong participation by women. Women moving into the workforce in large numbers helped drive a significant amount of America's economic growth over the past 40 years. Without that movement, the average American family would be earning $14,000 less today, and our gross domestic product would be about $2 trillion smaller. So when women's participation is limited, our country's prosperity is limited too. And there are still too many women who want to work more and earn more, but are held back by outdated policies and pressures. That hurts them, that hurts their families, that translates into more families struggling. We're just leaving that money, that growth on the table. And many families then can't afford their standard of living. They can't afford to get into and stay in the middle class. And sometimes when I would go out and talk about women's issues, which I've done for decades, and particularly as Secretary of State, when I said that it was the great unfinished business of the 21st century, because the data on all of this is overwhelming, I could see men's eyes glaze over. I could see particularly foreign leaders, but some Americans too, saying, oh yeah, here she goes. Just look like you're concentrating. Act like you're listening, and this too shall pass. But when we began using the economic data collected by, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and a lot of other organizations, both public and private, and I could say, do you know how much money you're leaving on the table? Do you know how much greater your economic growth and GDP could be if women were able to participate fully in the economy? Because this great unfinished business of the 21st century really is moving toward the full participation of women and girls in every aspect of society all over the world. That is a goal that has inspired me from the time I was an advocate for children and families through today, and which I took with me into the State Department because I wanted it to be a priority of American foreign policy. Because where women are included, you're more likely to have democracy, you're more likely to have stability and prosperity. So it's not just a nice thing to do. It's important to our economic growth and our security. And since leaving the government, I've worked on it at the Clinton Foundation with my daughter. And Chelsea and I are working with Melinda Gates and other partners on an initiative we call No Ceilings, the Full Participation Project. We're collecting the best data and research available on the gains women and girls have made around the world over the past 20 years, and the gaps that still remain. And we're looking at ways to accelerate progress in the years ahead. Next month, we'll publish a sweeping global progress report full of data designed to be accessible, shareable, even snackable, and I hope you'll all check it out. Now, there will be good news to celebrate. For example, around the world, we've nearly closed the gender gap in primary education. But there's also bad news, including the persistent gap between boys and girls in secondary education. When it comes to technology, the data reveals a massive digital divide. An estimated 200 million fewer women than men are online in developing countries. And you know better than most how internet access can help unleash economic growth, lift people out of poverty. So this is a problem, but it's also an opportunity to build new markets, to improve education, to spur new growth. Technology has the potential to empower women and girls like nothing ever before, and it is helping inspire and mobilize grassroots action in places we'd never expect. I've seen that firsthand. I've seen how innovations starting right here are helping to lift people out of poverty, giving them more control over their own lives, helping them hold their governments accountable. I'll never forget one woman I met at a tech camp that we set up at the State Department in Lithuania to train pro-democracy activists from Russia and other former Soviet countries, help them stay one step ahead of the censors and secret police. It was part of a broader effort that included investing in new apps and devices to protect dissidents, like a panic button that a protester could press on a phone that would signal to friends that she was being arrested while simultaneously erasing all of her personal contacts. For the tech camps, we brought along experts from Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft to explain how activists could protect their privacy and anonymity online and thwart restrictive government firewalls. I asked one young woman from Belarus if she was scared that coming to this tech camp would get her in trouble back home. She said, "No, my government can go to hell," she said. "I'm here to learn how I can promote democracy." My goal was to make the State Department a hub of innovation, leading the way with what we call 21st century statecraft, harnessing new technologies, public-private partnerships, diaspora networks, tapping expertise right here in Silicon Valley to help build programs that would address the challenges from the drug war in northern Mexico to the epidemic of rape in eastern Congo to persecution in the Middle East. And a partnership we called Civil Society 2.0 helped deliver technology training to more than 1,000 civil society organizations from 80 countries. And I was very pleased that we were ranked in the State Department as having the most innovation-friendly culture. Now, the federal government has a long way to go, so you might think that's damning with faint praise, but we were pleased that the work we were doing was being recognized, that we could effectively partner with Silicon Valley and the broader tech community. We had a great public-private partnership called M-Women, which brought together leading telecom companies from around the world to narrow the digital divide. And there was this wonderful woman from India at the launch event. She represented the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, an economic cooperative that has transformed the lives of millions of poor women through microloans and other support. Here's the story she told me. She said for most of her life, she had never seen a cell phone. She made a meager living by picking flowers and then bringing them to the local market where she would go from trader to trader, hoping to find a buyer. Sometimes her entire day was spent this way with nothing sold. Then she joined SEWA, and through SEWA, she got a loan for $48 to buy her first mobile phone. Suddenly, she could actually call different markets, arrange to sell her flowers at a fair price in a fraction of the time. She used the money she saved to start a small business. She started buying and selling grain from neighboring villages, also using her cell phone. It was her dream that every woman would get a phone. Now, the bottom line from all the data and all the stories is this. We still have a long way to go, but progress is possible, especially when we make a commitment of resources and political will. In fact, I think we are at a pivotal point that requires all of us to work together, roll up our sleeves, figure out what we're going to do, whether it's here in Silicon Valley or halfway around the world, to help shape the future we want, to close the digital divide, to unlock our full potential, crack every last glass ceiling. So technology presents both peril and promise for all human beings. And it also presents some challenges for our economy, and this is another area where we should be clear-eyed about the gains and the gaps. American innovation, including the work many of you do, holds such enormous potential, whether it's clean energy or cloud computing or the Internet of Things. New advances will continue to revolutionize how we live, learn, and do business. And increasingly, the divide between the old economy and the new is breaking down. The next wave of innovation could reach far beyond not just Silicon Valley, but certainly beyond our nation's borders, creating new industries and remaking established ones. And that's important because even the most successful tech startups rarely end up hiring large numbers of American workers. So there's enormous promise in the intersection of new technology, IT, but also nanotech, biotech, robotics, and traditional industries like energy, automobiles, healthcare, education, and more. That's really the beating heart of the American economy. That's where most Americans work. So we should set our sights on increasing productivity, spurring growth, and improving standards for all, not just a few at the top. And let's be honest, as we've learned the hard way, there can be a real human cost to some of these amazing innovations. We can't lose sight of that. Just as technology can boost productivity and create jobs, it has the potential to put many people out of their jobs by automating processes that used to require a full day's work. Advances that are supposed to move us ahead can end up leaving a lot of people further behind. And I know from my own travels and discussions how many Americans feel the ground shifting under their feet. The old jobs and careers are either gone or unrecognizable, and the old rules just don't seem to apply. And frankly, the new rules are just not that clear, and the result is anxiety and dislocation. Just think about how much our families have changed with caregivers becoming breadwinners. Well, our jobs have changed too, and wages no longer rise with productivity, while CEO pay keeps going up. Young people expect to change jobs much more frequently, certainly, than their parents. So if we want to find our balance again, we have to figure out how to make this new economy work for everyone. That's why we have to ask how we organize ourselves, so that technological change helps create more jobs, not just disrupts and displaces them, and how we try to have rising wages. We have to redouble our efforts to provide the education and skills, not just for our kids, but for adults too, so they have the tools they need to change jobs or start businesses. And we have to think hard about how to have the flexibility and support that American families need so that parents can be both great workers and great parents. And that brings me back to Moore's Law and the March of Progress. Because we can't do this without working together. We can't do it without really empathizing and understanding what our neighbors are going through. But I think we can help more families find a way forward, find their footing in the middle class, find a way to see rising wages and rising hopes. I think it's within our grasp, but I know it's not inevitable. Our economic success is not a birthright. It can't be inherited. It has to be earned by each generation, just like it was earned by those who came before us. You know, my grandfather was a factory worker in the lace mills in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Proudly worked there from the age of 11 till he retired at 65. My father made it to college on a football scholarship, started a small business. My mother overcame a childhood of abandonment to help build a middle-class life for me and my brothers. And I knew I was the beneficiary, not only of their love and hard work, but their aspirations for us and a larger community that believed as they did in America's promise. I never doubted how fortunate I was to live in America at a time of such positive change, from the post-war economic boom to the civil rights movement to the women's movement. And I hope for all of our children the same sense of possibility that I had. Now, it can be easy to get discouraged sometimes if you look only at the headlines, but if you look at the trend lines, you can see there is a movement stirring across our nation. It is about putting families first. It is about creating a 21st century economy for 21st century families. You can see it in parents across California who demanded paid sick leave so they wouldn't have to choose between their jobs and their kids. You can see it in the security guards right here in Silicon Valley who are organizing for more hours, not fewer. You can see it in the hourly workers in San Francisco who fought to make shift schedules more predictable and family life more stable. You can see it in the businesses and community leaders coming together to invest in early childhood education in Oakland. And you can see it in the moms demanding equal pay for equal work and the dads demanding access to quality, affordable child care. So many people are just asking for that same chance, a chance at a living wage, at their dreams. And there are many reasons to think that we will reinvent ourselves, we will figure out how we're going to do this, we'll be part of the solution. That's really what I think lead on means. Yes, lead on for yourselves. All of us have to come to grips with rising and falling, as I heard Brené Brown say at the very end. We fall together, we rise together. And as women, let's do more to help all women lead on and succeed. My friend Madeleine Albright famously said, "There is a special spot in hell for women who don't help other women." So, what you do does not have to be big and dramatic. You don't have to run for office. Although, if you do, more power to you. But seriously, a helping hand or a kind word can make a big difference. It's one of those click moments where you realize that helping somebody else not only feels good, but ends up helping you. The more we stand with each other, the more obstacles we can overcome, the more we will be able to shape our own destinies. That's true not just for women, it's true for everyone. Indeed, it's true for our entire country. So you came here today under the banner of Lead On, wanting to listen and learn and meet and talk and network, because there may be nuggets you can pick up and use for your own professional or personal betterment. But there may also be ways you can think about, I hadn't thought about how that could help my friend or my coworker, my neighbor. I'm going to try to have a conversation about what I heard today, or about an issue that you really have been kind of stewing over, but now maybe go out and find some other people to lead on with you to try to resolve, to prove every single day that progress is possible in our own lives. And believe me, I know that's not easy, because we have no time to waste. In our report, the progress report we're issuing with the Gates Foundation on the progress women around the world, including in the United States, have made over the last 20 years, we boldly assert that there has never been a better time to be a woman in the history of the world. And indeed, I believe that with all my heart. The changes that I've seen in my own life, changes I've watched my daughter go through, and what I now think about the future for my granddaughter, I'm absolutely convinced of that. But I also believe, and maybe it's part of the American DNA, we have a special obligation to make it better for each other as well as ourselves, and to set an example for people across the globe. When my granddaughter Charlotte was born on September 26, 2014, I have to confess, I was just overwhelmed. I've had lots of friends who got to grandparenthood before me and who have far more grandchildren than I will ever catch up to. And I heard them, and I listened to them, and I thought, that's really nice. And then all of a sudden, here is this new life, this new hope, this new opportunity, this blessing given to us in my family. And of course, her parents, her grandparents, her extended family, we will do whatever it takes to make sure that this baby has every opportunity in the world. But even as I say that, I know that's not enough, because she will become a citizen of our country and of the world in 20, 25 years, God willing. And what kind of world is going to be there waiting for her? Is it a world of hope or fear? Is it a world of possibility or shrunken, destroyed dreams? I don't know. I do know that it really matters for the life I hope she will lead, that we do everything we can now to make sure every child is given the same opportunities we will do our best to provide for her. I believe talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And leading on means, in large measure, how we expand that circle of opportunity, so every girl and boy has a chance to be all she or he can become with their own efforts, their own work, but with the support and the love of the rest of us. The time to start is now. I'm excited about what we can do together, and I believe that all of us can certainly show the way as we lead on to the kind of future we want. Thank you all very, very much.